Which free agent should the Dallas Cowboys target this summer? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're taking a look at 3 free agents that the Dallas Cowboys should consider now that we are in the compensatory free segment of free agency. I don't know if that's the way we're going to word it.
Compensatory unaffected, right? Yeah.
Right. Which basically means the Cowboys can sign any free agent they want to, and it's not going to impact their comp pick formula, which, by the way, the Cowboys are scheduled right now to get 3 fifth-round picks and a 6th-round pick in next year's draft.
Yeah.
That's not insignificant. But let's talk about some options here. And let's start with Calais Campbell, who's played with the Cardinals, the Ravens, and then most recently the Falcons.
Yeah, this to me is, when you look at the landscape of who's still available out in undrafted free agency, and then you view it through the glasses of need for the Cowboys, right? Calais Campbell is a real blinking light to me, right? He's a guy that he's been in the league for, I don't even know, actually, it was his 13th year, 12th year or something like that.
It's been a long time.
He's
figured out
well into his 30s, past his mid 30s. And he's a guy that has been consistently good. I mean, consistently very good for more than 10 years in a row. Even last year, with Atlanta, he was a bright star of their, or at least the bright star of their defense. And I think the metrics that are up here on the screen kind of show that out a little bit. His pass rush, is not quite what it used to be, but as far as a run defender goes, he is still near the top and at the cream of the crop. And the thing about him specifically that I think is such a great fit for what the Cowboys are trying to do is he has just a history of playing all up and down the line, whether it's outside at defensive end, as a stand-up defensive end, as a nose tackle, as a defensive tackle. Last year he spent a little bit more time outside. The year before that, he spent a little more time inside. But I think the point is that this is a guy who could come in and give you really, really positive snaps from the 1 technique all the way to, I think, the 5 and the 6 technique. And just kind of be a guy that you throw into a couple of different spots to get you good snaps. And then on top of that, obviously, I think a part of a rotation inside, it just solidifies the defensive tackle position a little bit more with a veteran presence, someone who has history of not only as a run stopper, as a guy that can clog up the middle when you need him, but someone who could also still give you a little bit as a pass rusher as well. The question will become cost, right? I think Campbell is probably going to command somewhere in the area of, I don't know, I think he made something like $8 million last year with Atlanta. I would say that if the Cowboys could get him for $6.5 or $7 million, however you want to kind of arrange that, I think that would probably be a good number for him. And I think it makes a lot of sense because, this is one of the positions in which, I don't know that the window for trying to get a guy that is more than just a body occupier is going to be open too much longer, right? Like he can give you more than someone who can take on double teams. He's a guy who can actually, get off blocks and make plays in the run game. He can, he'll get some sacks for you. And I think that the Cowboys, should probably start, looking into this situation sooner than later, because there's not too many of the Calais Campbell types out there once he's off the market.
So in 2022, the Ravens gave him a 2-year deal with $6 million guaranteed. I got to believe that it certainly won't be more than that as he's going into his 17th NFL season.
Wow.
Which is unbelievable. So I would assume, let's think about this. 1 year, $4.5 million, and then maybe $4 million guaranteed, $3 million guaranteed. Like the Cowboys can do that. I know everybody's thinking that the Joneses are pinching pennies, but like you can do that to get a solid defensive lineman. And if you're not watching with us on YouTube, I'll read the stats to you. 53rd percentile pass rush grade. These are all as an edge defender, by the way. 57th percentile pass rush win rate, 49th percentile no play action grade, 97th percentile run defense grade, 88th percentile run stop percentage. He is still an outstanding base end if you want to use him that way, or if you want to use him as a 4-eye. I think the Cowboys would use him probably more inside, probably on early downs. If I had to guess, maybe some, those big right end, which is where he played a little bit last year for Atlanta. But I think you can really use this player. I think last year he played 700 snaps. My guess is the Cowboys wouldn't ask him to play that many. I'm thinking more like 450, 500 snaps, which, maybe 20-ish snaps a game, maybe 25 snaps. They need more depth on this defensive line. And I think Campbell can wear a bunch of different hats on game day. I think this would be a really good value and a good signing. I'm hoping the Cowboys are interested here.
Yeah. I mean, I think he almost kind of, in a very different way, he almost kind of would serve in a sort of a Dante Fowler role, right? Like it is a veteran guy that is not the starter, but is a valuable rotational piece as part of making sure to kind of flush out and redistribute talent on that defensive line throughout the game, right? Because it's nice to be able to take Odigizua off the field and then being able to put in Calais Campbell as a guy that comes in to rotate with him, right? So I think, that's the kind of thought process of, this is a guy that still is playing high-level football. What if we reduced his snaps a little bit more? And gave him kind of a limited role that he could, really, really focus on. And then maybe you can get even some more years of high play out of him while reducing his snaps. I think it makes a lot of sense. The Cowboys have had a lot of success doing this before. Like I said, with Fowler, except in Fowler's was mostly as a pass rush role. I think Campbell, if you could use him as selectively, maybe not just in a pass rush role, obviously.
No, I think it'd be the opposite. I think it would be honestly, hey, you're going to be our quote unquote starting defensive end, right? With DeMarcus Lawrence and Michael. We're going to list you as a linebacker, and you can play on first down, second downs, and we'll give you series off to keep you fresh as the season goes. But I think that would be appealing to him. Hey, come be a starting defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys for a year. Yeah.
And again, while playing probably 75% of the snaps that you played last year, right? Like, and I think, keeping your body healthy for maybe another paycheck, Sure. So I think all of that would really appeal to Calais Campbell. And I think for the Cowboys, for all the reasons we talked about, like they obviously could still go out and get a Linval Joseph or another big, body occupying nose tackle. Those guys are going to be available for a little bit longer. But Calais Campbell offers you something in the versatility, the veteran experience, and then just the high floor of production that he has produced over the last decade plus that you're not going to have necessarily the opportunity throughout the rest of the offseason to kind of obtain. If you want to get this guy, I think the Cowboys, now that the comp pick is done, the formula is over, now that you're on track to get a bunch of money, I think something in the area of $10 to $15 million on June 1st, you can afford this a little bit more. And I think this is something where the Cowboys could make not a huge splash, but a very solid double in free agency in which you improve the team. It's going to be cheap. It doesn't hurt your comp pick. It's a win-win-win-win-win.
And we're talking about the Cowboys trying to improve their run defense. Bringing in Mike Zimmer, I think helps. Drafting Marshawn Nealon, I think, is going to help. Signing Eric Kendricks will help. Bringing another veteran run defender like Calais Campbell onto the defense just makes you feel even a little bit better about where they're trending in that direction. He isn't the only defensive lineman, though, that we are interested in the Cowboys signing. Let's talk about Carl Lawson next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased in your life. So today I want to tell you how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. I was at the gym yesterday, and we've got like 9 treadmills, and I was walking on the treadmill listening to podcasts, and all other 8 treadmills are open. But someone else comes and goes right on the treadmill right next to me for no reason at all. I don't understand it. Just completely ruined the vibes and the workout. Just, I don't get it. But it's whatever. I feel better now that I was able to tell somebody this. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have much bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off of your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Just visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Lane, let's stay on the defensive line. Who would you like to see the Cowboys add to their pass rush depth chart?
Well, another guy that's out there that, I know that John Oening's a huge fan of and has been a big fan of for a long time. And honestly, I have to throw my hat in the ring here as a Auburn Tiger as well. Carl Lawson is a guy that, he's had a very interesting career, right? He's very much been a kind of a pass rush specialist throughout his career. Bounced around a little bit. He's got a very unique kind of body type, right? And he's sort of this kind of remnant of a 3-4 outside linebacker type, right? Back from the days when we first started calling these guys edges, right? Because we couldn't quite define defensive end properly. I think that he's a guy that, he's a little bit shorter. He's very powerful, very explosive guy. And he's, mostly been a productive guy when he's been able to stay healthy. And that's ultimately the issue. I think his last 2 healthy seasons, not 2023, but 2022 and 2021 were probably his best seasons in the league, I would say. That first year with the Jets looked really good. But he has really had a lot of problems. He battled an Achilles injury. He's battled a back injury. And I think at a certain point early in the season last year, it just felt like he lost the confidence of the Jets coaching staff, right? And they just basically stopped using him. And part of it was, him still kind of dealing with a multitude of injuries that had kind of piled up over the last 2 years. But I think that, a good other portion of it seemed to be about, just the coaching staff wanting to go in a different direction. I think that Carl Lawson is an interesting fit for a couple of different reasons. One, I think that he probably has some good football left in him. If he's healthy and he's motivated, and we know just from interacting with him a little bit, he's a hard worker. He's serious about this craft. He's always constantly trying to refine his pass rushing craft, which I think is a huge thing. I think that he's looking for an opportunity to get one more big paycheck, right? And I think he needs to have another season. He need to have a prove it season, right? I think with a team like the Cowboys, I think you could bring him in here. And we were talking about was it a day or two ago when we were talking about most improved players on this defense. We talked about Tyrus Wheat and him being kind of a backup to Micah Parsons at that Sam. I think Carl Lawson would be an incredible fit there, right? Yeah. Just because he has experience playing standing up. He could do some things in some country drop zones if you want to run some fire zone stuff where he can drop out. Obviously, he's going to be good at taking on tight ends and playing on the outside, setting the edge. And then as a pass rusher, I mean, that's where he makes his money, right? And just having, I think having a guy like Carl Lawson in the room would be valuable for all other parties involved, right? Just in his influence, right? In this, because he's such a technician and student of the game that even for a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence, who I view as a very similar sort of, master sitting at the top of the mountain and at the, like an episode of Kung Fu or something, where he understands the deeper technique and he can teach the grasshoppers exactly what they need to know. I think Lawson.
I thought you were going to Kill Bill. I
am.
Right?
It's all tied into the same vibe. And I think that Lawson is the same sort of guy, right? Where I think, he understands how to use technique. He's been a guy that has not had like optimal athleticism for the position for a long time, but he's hung around in the league because he knows how to use his body. He knows how to use his hands in a way that has kept him around. I think having guys like Carl Lawson and DeMarcus Lawrence is huge for the development of Sam Williams and Nealon's and that sort of thing. So I think just another voice in the locker room, a guy that can give you some similar stuff to Micah Parsons in this defense, where he could be a backup, but he could also play right end in certain formations. Just another guy you could rush the passer in a couple of different spots. I don't know that you can afford both Carl Lawson and Calais Campbell.
No, probably only a spot for one of these guys. I would prefer Campbell over Lawson.
I think so too, but I think that Lawson is a guy that if you are looking to improve, just raise the floor on the pass rush a little bit while getting some more veteran experience that can kind of help some of the younger players. If you can't get Calais Campbell, Carl Lawson is not a terrible consolation prize at all.
He's only 28. I mean, it's not like he's in his 30s either. I mean, he's a full 10 years younger than Calais Campbell.
10 years younger than Calais Campbell.
Well, and there's a reason why he didn't put up big numbers with the Jets last year. They were loaded with pass rushers, whether it was Bryce Huff, who got a big deal, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, who was a first-round pick, Will McDonald, who was a first-round pick, Solomon Thomas. I mean, they had a ton of pass rush depth there. The Cowboys have had success, like taking these former high draft picks. I think Lawson was a second-round pick.
Yes.
And then making them the fourth or fifth edge and coming in and having success. So I would be a big fan. If you're watching with us on YouTube right now, here are his advanced numbers over the last 2 years. 64th percentile pass rush grade, 71st percentile pass rush win rate, 67th percentile no play action grade. So you are getting an above average pass rusher who doesn't have to be your number one guy, doesn't have to be your number two guy. And frankly, depending on where Marshawn Nealon and Sam Williams land, might not even have to be your third guy. He is just somebody that can give you experience, can give you some quickness. I also think he's better against the run than maybe some of the advanced stats suggest. But again, he's going to be really cheap, and I think he can be an impact player.
Well, I also think that in this defense, he would be playing the run differently than he would be with the Jets potentially, right? Yes. Like, I mean, he would be playing it more as a Sam linebacker, probably. Setting an edge versus a tight end versus setting an edge versus an offensive tackle, which, I think kind of is a better fit for his body style, right? Like, I mean, he is clearly the size that he could play full-time defensive end and has played full-time defensive end without any problem in this league. Yep. But it also kind of is similar to what we talked about with Campbell, right? Where you have an understanding of where his weaknesses are, right? And then how do you kind of, accentuate the positive while minimizing the weakness? You put him at Sam linebacker where the angles are a little bit better for him. The physical disadvantage isn't as great, right? Between tight end and offensive tackle that he has to face. I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, another situation where you're not reliant on Carl Lawson to be your starting, main pass rusher, or even your secondary pass rusher, or even really your third pass rusher. Like, I think it's coming in and slotting him into a spot where he could produce hopefully on limited snaps and be a very valuable piece without, potentially exposing him to injury and wear and tear and that sort of thing.
All right, let's talk about one more free agent that could help on the defensive side of the ball, who we happen to know pretty well. We'll get to him next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer that it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minutes for sports tickets, concerts, comedy and theater events near you. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are discussing 3 outside free agents that could help the Cowboys going into the 2024 season. And the last name here, Landon, is somebody who we know well, Stephon Gilmore, who is still a free agent. What are your thoughts on potentially bringing him back?
You know, it just seems like a shame that he's out there and he's still available, and you can never have enough cornerback depth. I think the Cowboys are looking at their depth chart. They're realizing they have a lot of guys that kind of need snaps, that need some exposure. You know, they've got Eric Scott, who we talked about yesterday, coming back, or 2 days ago, rather, coming back. They've got Nashawn Wright still on the team. They drafted a kid that they like a lot in the mid rounds. So, you know, it feels like there's numbers there, right? And then on top of that, they re-signed Jordan Lewis, who's coming back. He's, you know, likely to play the slot. Obviously, Jerron Bland broke the pick 6 record last year, so that he's going to give him a starting spot. Trayvon Diggs coming back. So, you know, I could easily see why people would look at this situation and go, Landon, there's not enough room at the end. I still feel like that if they could figure out the number to make it work, it would be so valuable to have a guy like Stephon Gilmore on this roster. And I think that he could, you know, his role may even be able to change. Like, I think that he could play inside and outside if he wanted to play some more of Bland on the outside. I think that, you know, he has some ability to kind of mix it up a little bit more. We've seen him play in more kind of versatile defenses where they move him around a little bit. Mm-hmm. So just having his veteran presence and another guy that's in the locker room, you can just never have enough depth at the cornerback position. And I just feel like, you know, if they could figure out a way to get the number where it's agreeable, suddenly you again have 4 really solid corners, you know, 2 of which are, you know, borderline superstars. And I think that is something that is invaluable in today's NFL, having that kind of cornerback depth.
I completely agree. Like, if Stephon Gilmore wants to come back to this team, sign me up. Like, we saw last year with the cornerback depth, right? Like, Jordan Lewis took some time to get back to full health. By the time he got back on the field, Trayvon Diggs went down with an injury. Like, you need 4 corners that you feel really good about. I think the issue is Stephon Gilmore, we're going to want to sign onto a team where he's not guaranteed to start. And I think that's the issue. I mean, because I think you and I both agree, like, if Bland and Diggs are healthy, those are your outside corners, correct?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're trying to force your hand on pushing someone else onto the starting 3 and you push Bland back inside, but I would say outside of that, yeah.
I just think there's too many other teams in the NFL that have a lot worse cornerback rooms than the Cowboys with more cap space that could probably offer him a guaranteed starting role and more guaranteed money. But again, if Gilmore just wants to come back to the Cowboys because he really enjoyed his time here, sign me up. Sign me up.
Absolutely.
I've got some advanced numbers here, courtesy of Pro Football Focus. Some of them okay, some of them fine. 63rd percentile coverage grade, 78th percentile coverage grade with no pressure, 70th percentile coverage grade in single coverage, and then 64th percentile coverage grade on the outside. The issue with him is 34th percentile coverage in zone. That's actually gone down each of the last 5 years. I wonder with Zimmer maybe using more zone stuff, how that would be. Like I don't if they're gonna play more man match stuff. I don't know. And that's the only thing I worry about. Like if the Cowboys want to run more zone, is Gilmore a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how they run zone, right? And I think that's why sometimes it's hard to kind of parse these numbers a little bit because, being a cornerback in cover 4 is very different than being a cornerback in cover 2. It's
Correct.
like or it's different to play in the silo and side saddle up the field than it is to play man match. So it's like I think it's he's a guy that, like, I think you said it right, that there's probably too many teams that have too much need, that have too much money for him to come back for the Cowboys. But I think that if he did have interest and the numbers were right, you sign him and you figure it out, because honestly, ultimately what likely will figure it out is injury, is that somebody's going to get hurt and you'll find a spot for him because he'll need to go somewhere. So
the only other thing that concerns me is he will turn 34 before the season begins. And the cornerback position is just not one that typically ages very well. And I do wonder, like the Cowboys' last game of the year against the Packers, he did not play well. And now, was that because the entire defense didn't play well, because they were just all out of sorts? I don't know. But I do always worry about, like, what is the end going to look like with some of these older corners? Because it happens so fast to some of these players where they're playing at a good level, and then the next year they're out of the league completely. Having said all that, I want him back. I would love Stephon Gilmore to be a Cowboy this year for one more season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if they could figure it out, if he still looks like the same kind of player, get him in here, and if he falls off, you have options, So, but it makes a lot of sense to me still.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Landon on Twitter @McCoolBCB. I'm @Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.